Hey, movie fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Uncharted Media Podcast. This is episode 220, so you're catching us when Josh and I aren't constantly checking CinemaCon updates, which we'll talk about in movie news, but thus far, not as many announcements as I thought we'd be getting. There's a lot of
Yeah.
eclectic news, but nothing like groundbreaking or earth-shattering yet in terms of new stuff. We'll talk about the Sony and the Warner Brothers stuff today, just because we have to cut it off somewhere to get this episode out, because we know Disney and Paramount, Lionsgate, and other people have their stuff later this week, but these are the ones that have happened so far. The thing that we're going to talk about this week, we're going to do another one of those little mini series. This week, we're going to talk about the worst CGI of all time for us personally in movies. I know there's like millions upon millions of lists you can find online. These are our personal picks for worst CGI of all time. That's why you're going to see some odd or different picks than what you might see on usual top 10 lists. And then next week, on the flip side, we'll talk about the best CGI in movies. But before we get into all that, Josh, how you doing tonight?
Chilling like a villain as always, my man. I've had 2 consecutive days off, which is super like not common for me. So I literally did today. I didn't wake up until like, geez, I want to say like 1 or 2, which is like not common for me at all. But yeah, I've been busy today and busy. And yesterday, you and I played some video games since you got your Switch, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, just a lot of relaxing, a lot of chilling these days.
And we're going to put it on the record now on the podcast. I will beat Josh almost any time in Mario Kart by the skin of my teeth. Like, Josh and I are about even. I think I'm just slightly the better drifter until it comes to Super Smash, in which case, God, that's not even close. I will, in my defense, Josh has the full roster of Super Smash, and a lot of my go-to people.
I mean, there's that.
There's that too, but a lot of my people I have not unlocked yet. But no, it was a good time. But Josh, you watching anything good lately? I know you've been reading a lot.
I am, yeah. If you guys follow me on my Insta, like, yeah, I read a lot. I read the first volume of Radiant Black, which is something that I first had to find it. Turns out, by the way, you can buy all comics, all of Image's comics. You can buy them from their website. Don't know why I didn't know that,
like
but
in
here
hard
we
copy
are.
or digitally.
Hard copy.
Cool.
You can order it from them directly, which is why I was very much like, oh, why haven't I been doing that? That supports them directly, dude. Jeez. Anyway, so I finally got my hands on the first volume. Apparently, there's 4 out right now, so I should probably fix that pretty. I will fix that pretty soon, because gosh darn, it's a great book. It's a great story. And then I finally finished Shadow of the Gods, which was pretty good. I need to get the other ones of that because they left it on a cliffhanger, and now I'm mad about it. But I like the rest of the world. I also watched the Mandalorian season finale. I don't know I think this is just another thing of like Josh is just easy to please, because I don't think it was near as bad as a lot of people seem to think it was.
For me, it was very reflective of the season as a whole.
That's fair.
Like, it wasn't perfect, but it was not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. Was it the best of the finales? Definitely not. I think it was you that brought up a really good point of why was this 8 episodes and not 10?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could have been better served with another 2 episodes just to flush some stuff out and, maybe give some more screen time to Mando himself. But yeah, you and I have not been nearly as down on this season as many other people. It's definitely the weakest of the 3, but it's still not nearly as bad as people make it out to be, I think. I think it's also just maybe because we've gotten such lackluster Star Wars stuff lately, we're just like, Star Wars is Star Wars. It doesn't have the level of hype for us anymore, so we're just like,
yeah.
I don't want to say we've settled for just kind of okay, but like, I don't take it as like this cherished sacred thing anymore. It's a thing that I can enjoy, but it sounds depressing when I put it like that, but it's just like, they've kind of lowered the bar for themselves, I think, now that just adequate is good nowadays.
Yeah, which I think it's telling that I'm more excited for the Visions season 2 and Tales of the Jedi season 2 than I am anything else right now. Tales of the Jedi was incredible. I love Visions. I love giving artists opportunity to do separate things. I love that this season we're going to get some claymation stuff, which is super cool to me. But yeah, like it was fine. The Grogu thing was cool. I don't exactly know where we're going with after now that the dark saber's crushed, but cool, I guess. The only other thing I watched this week besides still trucking along on my Adventure Time watch
Yeah, because every
through.
once in a while you'll watch it on my account.
So I don't understand how that's happening, because I legitimately always make sure that I click on mine, and so I don't know how that's happening. But I did watch as a kind of family movie night. We watched Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl this week.
The first one.
Yeah, because oddly enough, my dad has seen what is it? Dead Man Tell No Tales, and like the 2 and 3, but not seen the first one. I was like, okay, Dad, that's kind of weird. But golly, that movie has held up very well. Like especially towards the end when you have the pirates going in and out of moonlight and like in action and stuff like that. So they continuously go from human to skeleton. It's so cool. Such a fun movie. Has aged fairly well, all things considered. It definitely still feels like just this swashbuckling adventure, going from fight to fight. Don't mind it at all. It's a great time.
Yeah, I think I need to go back and rewatch that. I haven't watched the first one in a really long time. I just remember the fight choreography swinging well above its weight class. That first sword fight between Jack and Will Turner in the smithery, like in the smithy, is that what the correct term is?
Yeah.
That's got amazing choreography. Good. But even then, you get to Dead Man's Chest, the choreography of the triple threat match, and when they're on the wheel, like, it was cool as a kid, but as an adult, I'm going, that is incredible choreography, and that is practical and terrifying that it's practical. I have so much actually to go over this week for what we're watching. I told Josh I finally finished Metroid Prime, the remastered version for the Switch, which is like a really big deal for me because I never actually got to finish the GameCube version, just because when I was a kid, I just would get stuck and I would give up, and then I'd play the second one for a little bit. Same thing, I'd get stuck, and I'd play the third one for a little bit and then get stuck, and it'd be a vicious cycle. Like, I would constantly play them, but up until a certain point, I just either couldn't figure out where I was supposed to go or what I was supposed to do. And now with, IGN walkthroughs, I will openly admit that I just completely was using walkthroughs when I got stuck. But it's one of the greatest games I've ever played. It's a brilliant remaster, but the original game was just spectacular. And just finishing it, it was one of those games that when I stopped, it's like, I genuinely feel accomplished right now. Like, I've done something, and it makes me so happy. But take that out of the equation. I watched 5 movies since the last time we were on the podcast.
Attaboy!
Varying quality. I'm just like, I'm slacking off on what I need to be watching this year. So I watched Leslie Nielsen's The Naked Gun for the first time. It's spotty, I'll be honest.
Yeah, like, it's not his best work.
Some jokes are so funny, and then you get ridiculously long dry spells of either jokes aren't hitting or just there aren't jokes at all. I'm like, I always kind of lump the Naked Gun movies in the same category as like the Hot Shots movies. I like Hot Shots, but do a lot better than Naked Gun. Naked Gun was fine. There was a couple lines that I actually just burst out laughing. It was fine. I don't feel like I need to see 2 and 33 and a third. Then I watched 3 horror movies back to back to back of varying qualities. I watched Chopping Mall, which this is just right up my alley. Just describing to Josh, he'll be like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like your department." It is a Canadian slasher movie. I believe it's Canadian. Of a bunch of teenagers stay the night in a mall and basically just have a big old party in a mall. Apparently that was a thing. But the mall just introduced new security robots as security, and that the robots are get struck by lightning or something, so they kill people instead. Dude, it is so much fun. And I'll be honest, the kills and the stunts are going way above their weight class. Like, there's a couple stunts in
That
this,
is
and I'm
like
going,
some that is some serious yoga to get to the plot that you want that you want to tell. I can guarantee they're like, hey, we want robots killing teens in a mall. Okay, cool. How do we get there? Well,
it reminds me a lot of the old Universal movies, like not the Universal monster movies, but the old Universal horror movies of they would give the title, and then after the title, then you have to figure out the plot. Like somebody clearly had the title, chopping block, and some executive was like, you got to make that work. But yeah, there's some really good kills. There's a really good practical head explosion that, like, how they cut it
ooh.
together. I was going, oh, you were doing really good. Because normally, like, what happens in those type of movies is you see someone like struggling, cut to one of the friends, then you cut back, which is when you swap out with a dummy head and it blows up. There was no swap to the dummy head. It was just a really, really good cut. And I'm going, oh snap, you just blew that person's head up. Some pretty good stunts. If I find this on like Blu-ray, I might have to buy it. Then the best horror movie I watched, called The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Have you never seen it before?
Have you seen it?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite horror movies.
Really? That does not surprise me. Okay.
It's so good.
Dude, I freaking loved it. Y'all, so The Autopsy of Jane Doe, the title kind of says it. A Jane Doe, gets rolled into the morgue one day, and a father and son kind of have to do an autopsy. And it's a lot like the mortuary assistant of, like, it starts off just as a CSI thing, and then it gets weirder and weirder. I love a good horror movie that has mystery to it. And this felt like a mortuary assistant mixed with a little bit of the 1408 in terms of being stuck in one location with things continuing to unravel and unravel. I kind of liked it because even at the end, when they pretend to give definitive answers to things, at least in my mind, I interpreted them differently, like waiting for the rug to be pulled of like certain characters die, that I'm going, is that actually them or is it some other shenanigans going on? Oh, I'm glad you've seen it. Also, I didn't realize until after the movie was done when I'm watching the credits, it's the same guy that did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So that does not
No way.
That doesn't surprise me at all. It's the same guy that's doing The Last Voyage of Demeter, which if you guys have not watched the trailer for The Last Voyage of Demeter, that looks so sick. And then last for the horror movies, I watched John Carpenter's The Fog because I love John Carpenter. This movie's got Jamie Lee Curtis.
You hate yourself?
Yeah. So this movie has all the pieces that you would think I would want in a movie. You got Jamie Lee Curtis. You've got Halloween 3's Tom Atkins. You got Janet Leigh. You get John Carpenter making a cameo in the movie. His great score. Good God, this movie's boring. It is so boring. I almost fell asleep. It's not particularly scary. And also people are like, it's got perfect ambiance and atmosphere. I'm like, no, it does not. It is boring. It is dull. However, if there's one thing that actually kind of creeped me out a little bit, in The Fog, it's basically like there's these like cursed pirates or whatever that'll come back like 100 years or so after their initial curse. The curse and the events of the movie take place on April 21st. I did not know that going into this movie, so I actually watched it
creepy.
On Friday, April 21st, and I'm watching going, say what now? I don't like that. That was the weirdest coincidence ever.
That's like the what is it in? I think it's Freddy Fazbear's the new Freddy game. One of like the little like cutouts. You press the button and it's like happy birthday, wishing some kid happy birthday, and it just happens to be Markiplier's birthday. And he's like, wait, hold on.
I'm sure that was done as a joke to Mark. I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't doubt it.
And then,
without his knowledge, which is hilarious.
Lastly, I watched Galaxy Quest.
Hey.
It's fine.
It's a thing.
It's fine.
It's fun.
I know some people are just like, it has aged really, really well in the current age of fandom. I would agree with that. I think this is a movie made for Trekkies, well, not for legal reasons, saying that it's for Trekkies. It was fine. I think they could have done better with making some of the characters likable. There's not really one character that's like likable that you anchor yourself to. There's some that are less detestable than others, but none of them are particularly great. And once again, like Naked Gun, there's a couple of scenes that I was like, okay, that was funny, but nothing like, considering this is like a cult classic, I wasn't blown away humor wise as I was kind of expecting. But yeah, I need to catch up with more movies, and this was a big start in that direction, I think.
I'm actually really surprised that you hadn't seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
I had
because
heard good things about it.
Yeah, because I know I had when I saw it, I texted you like right away. I was like, dude, this thing is amazing. You need to see this. Yeah, it's super good. The atmosphere is incredible. I love that even when you feel like the movie's going in a specific direction, it does not go in that direction. I think it currently it is the closest we're going to get to a mortuary assistant movie, but gosh, it's so good. I'm so glad you've seen it, and I'm so glad you loved it.
And then lastly, it's been written, and now it's been recorded.
Ooh, here we go.
Pitching a Nightwing movie part 2 has been recorded, is now in my system, and it's also on a hard drive just to be doubly safe. Like I have it on my computer and then I'm on another thing. Because, y'all, if I start sounding tired later in this episode, it's basically because I recorded 2 podcasts today, because I took a couple takes of certain things, but all told, the raw recording right now is like an hour and a half. So I need to figure out how to trim that down. Also, recorded that today, but I also cut down the original Nightwing video that'll go inside this new one. So if you haven't seen the original one in a while, or if you just haven't seen it, period, which you should, by the way, there's going to be like a 4.5 minute recap video in that, just to kind of catch you up to speed of all the important things you'll need to know. So yeah, I'm happy to be done with it. The editing part is going to be the easy part for me. It's the actually writing it and actually recording it is always the actually doing it. Now the editing you can just kind of chip away at, but it's finally done. So, with all that said, let's get into the news. First up, we're going to treat this as its own separate thing. I know they talked about it a little bit at CinemaCon, but we're going to treat the Flash trailer as its own thing. So this Flash trailer, I'm conflicted because the trailer is a good trailer for a DC event film, but I think it's a bad Flash trailer. And I put this on Twitter when I shared the trailer. I completely 100% understand that the marketing department for this movie really has a hard task ahead of them, just with all the crap surrounding this movie. That being said, this movie is not a Michael Keaton Batman movie, or at least it shouldn't be. But from the first trailer and this one, I feel like the Flash is a minor character or a supporting character in the Flash movie. Now, it's tricky because I know some people will be like, this is just going to reboot everything. Yeah. But that was always the plan for this movie. Like, all those years ago, this movie's been stuck in development hell forever now. But the thing is, this Flash movie has always been a Flashpoint story, whether we wanted it to be or not. Like, even when they started working on this in, like, 2016 or 2017, it was supposed to be a Flashpoint that would kind of, quote-unquote, fix the problems that people had with the Snyderverse and kind of set things anew. And it would be a soft reboot, not a hard reboot. Whether or not Flashpoint is a good starting point, we can debate until we're blue in the face. I think Josh and I both agree that it's probably not the smartest place to start Barry's story. You lead up to that. Yeah. But it being like a world-ending time travel adventure has kind of always been the plan for this movie, because that's why no director has stayed on to this project very long, or why a writer hasn't stayed on for very long. It's been a revolving door, more so than the Uncharted movie, and that's saying something. You had why do I feel like Rick Famuyiwa, who did Mandalorian, was attached to this at one point, and then the guys that just did Dungeons and Dragons were attached to it at one point. I feel like there's somebody else besides Andy Muschietti before. We now have Andy Muschietti. We had a bunch of writers. So it's never been about one cohesive Flash story, unfortunately. It's always been, how can we make this the biggest event possible? And at the end of the day, I've only really wanted a Flash story, but I get why the marketing is selling it as this way, because if you still check online, people didn't forget. People don't forget. People shouldn't forget of all the stuff that Ezra Miller has done. And during the actual panel, during the actual presentation, Peter Safran, who was there, James Gunn was probably doing off doing press tour stuff for Guardians 3. Peter Safran did say Ezra's a phenomenal talent to work with, but they did not specify whether or not they were bringing Ezra back for future projects, to which I'm just going, there's no chance in hell that you bring Ezra back. You just can't. You have to be as polite as possible about this presentation, but you got to walk that tightrope for this, because I'm sure they want this movie to do well, and they are putting this movie over super strong, like Roman Reigns 2015 levels of trying to put it over strong. It's just got to deliver, and so far none of the trailers have wowed me, primarily because it just feels like an event movie for the sake of being an event movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that has always been its kind of downside of like, oh, cool. So we're just going to get like this Flashpoint paradox. All right, that's fun. Haven't really had much of interaction with Barry as the Flash in general, but sure, okay, yeah, let's go all the way to like one of the events in his history that like defines the entire universe. It's the trailer's fine, it's cool, it's got some fun shots, but like you said, if for a Flash trailer, you don't really see much of him. They haven't really offered an explanation in the trailer as far as why there's two Barrys, or why there's two Batmans, or why.
Well,
it's very.
We can kind of piece that together. I would think one Barry is the Barry of Michael Keaton's universe, and one Barry is probably the one that we already know. And the Batman thing, well, we've already met Ben Affleck's Batman before. He's already met Ezra Miller's Flash. So I think he goes, and instead of, it's going to be weird because in the Flashpoint, he goes back in time. If I get the sense in this one, he's going to a different universe entirely. Like he says in the trailer, I go to the one where my mom lives. Like, okay, so you're going to basically hijack some other Barry here.
Yeah.
It feels like they're just kind of revisiting DC's greatest hits type of thing, of like bringing back Zod and getting little snippets of Supergirl, but not really fully wanting to commit to that, of like showing everything with Supergirl. Also, maybe it's just me. I think Supergirl will not have as much of a presence in this movie as we think, because a lot of the shots kind of seem like the end of the movie. Like they all kind of look like they're in the same location, which makes me think the marketing wasn't going to rely too heavily on Supergirl's presence, but now due to other circumstances, we need to evenly distribute the spotlight as off of just Barry alone, and now put it on Michael Keaton's Batman, who probably gets the most screen time of anybody in this trailer. Like the first 30 seconds of the trailer are dedicated to him monologuing, which, I mean, cool that Michael Keaton's back. He's aged really well, but at the same time, it's always felt like a weird thing to put him in this movie. I like his Batman fine, but he'll never be my favorite. At the same time, I understand that he is the favorite for a large generation of people, and I think Warner Brothers knows that, and that's why they're focusing so heavily on Michael Keaton, and the advertising is, we need the older generations who aren't on social media and Twitter to know the bad things Ezra Miller did. We need the older generations to come out and support this movie, because the younger generations might actually follow through on their boycott stuff or not be interested as they have been in other movies.
Yeah, and I can't, honestly, I wouldn't blame people if they weren't interested in this film with or without the Ezra stuff. I'm like you, not a big fan of like Michael Keaton's Batman's fine. Honestly, a lot of his quips, especially in this trailer, feel kind of forced. And it's, while it's cool, it's like, yeah, let's get nuts is a cool line for the time that that movie came out, but now it feels, if you don't have emotional attachment to that Batman, it feels like something akin to Martha. Like, why did you say that name? It's like, okay, cool, but like, what does that mean? What does that do for me? That being said, Michael Keaton's Batman looks stinking awesome in this movie. There's so much stuff that he does that is a lot of fun and really cool, that I can't wait to see on screen. I just I and I know, like, everybody that we've that's quote unquote seen this film has said that it is one of the best superhero films they've ever seen. This is also a bunch of, movie execs and, theater owners. So it's like,
The ones that change their mind all the time, the ones that supposedly gave
yeah,
Batman versus Superman a standing ovation.
yeah, it's like, okay, buddy, whatever you say there.
Next up, we got a news topic just for Josh, because in terms of actual concrete news, there's probably not a lot here, but
Yeah.
speculation is the name of the game here. That's what we do best. Except unlike some other places, we will never report speculation as fact. Apparently, if you want to get any DC news lately, you just kind of ask James Gunn, is this true or is it not? And if he feels like it, he'll say one way or the other. So one
Yeah.
fan asked James Gunn something we've all kind of been wondering of: what is the current situation with Static Shock? Because Josh willed it into existence, and Static Shock has been reportedly in development for probably about a year at least now, since they announced it like a year or two ago at DC Fandom. And so with this whole reboot and everything getting reset, it kind of leaves a lot of things up in the air as to what their current status is. Like the Static Shock movie, the Michael B. Jordan Superman movie, you know, a Nightwing movie that was promised 6 years ago. Not that I'm at all bitter about that. I've moved on in a healthy manner as I'm hard at work working on a second one. I'm fine. How are you? But James Gunn has put some of that to rest as someone asked him, "Do you guys have plans for Static Shock and other milestone characters?" To which he just responded, "Yes." I'm going, can you elaborate on that? And then insert Grogu. No.
No.
Like, it's weird what James Gunn decides to respond to, especially, at CinemaCon, as we'll talk about later here, they gave nothing about the future whatsoever, but, just say it on Twitter. It's fine. I think this is cool. I don't know what he specifically means, and I don't think anybody does until Comic-Con. I think we'll get a much better picture of what the 10-year plan is.
I agree.
Actually, this sucks to hear, but I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of news about the 10-year plan until after Blue Beetle comes out, because then there's only one movie left, Aquaman, and they really want these last movies, the attention to be on them, specifically Flash, and then I'm still kind of worried about Blue Beetle. This does not surprise me, because Static is, as much as Josh and I love him, he's a character that is loved by a very specific generation and a very specific culture. And I think James Gunn is a part of that, because James Gunn loves the deep cut characters. Static Shock is a beloved character, but so are the other milestone characters that are much more obscure. And I could absolutely see James Gunn wanting to reach down and grab into that well of characters. Who's why am I blanking? I was about to say the guy from Young Justice, but he was in Young Justice. The green cape, circle O on the chest, like chest piece, kind of looks like a hybrid of Alan Scott's Green Lantern and Jon Stewart's Green Lantern. Why am I blanking on the name?
Dude. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'll toss it over to you while I look it up.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it is what it is. It's cool that he's at least like acknowledging that, like, yes, there are plans to use not just Static but also the other milestone characters. Mostly because, unless you're like in the loop, you would have forgotten that a Static Shock movie and some other milestone character, Icon. There you go. But like, there's a lot of characters that from the milestone comics that they had at what is it, DC Fandom, like the first one had said, like, there are all plans in the works for these. And I had wondered, okay, with the Switch, do these get put by the wayside? seeing how it's James Gunn, I doubt it. I doubt it'll be very long before we see Static Shock. Something that's kind of along these lines is if you see Twitter's great, but like
Is it?
out of context, it can be interesting. Um, oh geez, I feel so bad because I'm so bad at pronouncing names. But the kid that's playing Blue Beetle,
Oh, Shola
um,
Maraduena?
yes, was getting interviewed by Entertainment Tonight and said like, I can't wait to see how these characters get folded into the rest of the DC universe. And it was like, so wait, is that him saying that he's gonna survive the switch? Wait,
No,
hold on.
I think it means like every other actor currently. I kind of hope I have a job in a few weeks.
Fair enough. That's fair. But like, I definitely like would love to see. I will have been very vocal that a Static and Blue Beetle team up would be peak. I mean, yes, I watch a lot of Young Justice, but that does not matter because it still would work really well. But yeah, I'm I hate that, and this is probably on James kind of side of he's keeping a lot of stuff very close to the chest. To his credit, like given that you have not released your 10-year plan yet, yeah, you should keep everything pretty close to the chest. You should kind of put it into a position where people are still guessing. I'm still going to remain on Gunn's side here, but like he has had to fight the misinformation train so hard these past few months. It's kind of hilarious. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do drop the 10-year plan at cinema at Comic-Con just to kind of get some pressure off of Gunn's back a little bit so that they can actually get moving with some of these projects and get the hype train going.
Well, even then, he keeps talking about this 10-year plan. I don't even think he'll announce the 10-year plan because if you look at Marvel, their first 10 years is essentially Iron Man to Infinity War. Like, we didn't get all of that announced in one Comic-Con. Like, that's a lot of
to
stuff.
To be fair, that was because they didn't start forming a plan until after the first Avengers movies.
Yeah,
so
that's true too.
That.
But yeah, I think we're in for a solid 4 or 5 projects coming out this year. Yeah, I'm curious about this big plan and like, is Static still going to stay its own separate movie? Is he going to be in a Young Justice movie? Because, oh my good God, if we ever get a Young Justice or a Teen Titans movie, just shut up and take all of my money. Like, please, 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 or both. I'll settle for for both. Young Justice versus the Teen Titans. I'd be okay with that too. Like, I know we kind of got that with Justice League versus the Teen Titans, the animated movie.
Yeah.
But that's a good template, I think, actually, of like the older team gets corrupted somehow and the younger team has to fight him. I think that could be interesting. I think Static is a great character and that has needed to be on the big screen for the longest amount of time. But like a Batman Beyond, it's always kind of been that question of, is there enough of a fan base? But nostalgia is in right now. And I think a lot of people will hop on that bandwagon of, oh yeah, I've always been a Static fan, or I watched Static when I was a kid. I would definitely go see a Static now type of thing. It's all in how it's presented and who you cast, also known as just get the kid from Stranger Things like we all want. That would be fantastic if he's not going to be Miles. But also, I would be curious to see how Static handles a lot of the more mature issues that it handled on the show. Yes. That was a show that was not afraid to tackle the hard issues, and it was incredibly well done. So I'd be very curious to see how that's handled. I'm glad this is surviving, but then again, James Gunn could be saying that, and Static could be in year 7 of the 10-year plan, like still way far down the road.
Yeah, it all kind of depends on how they build the world out. Is, are metahumans a thing from the beginning? How are they created? That kind of conversation that always comes from when you start a DCEU kind of situation. Obviously, if Terry McGinnis showed up at some point, I love me some Batman Beyond, so I'd be stoked about that too. But yeah, please bring Static Shock to the screen.
So Josh can have his biggest prediction ever be right.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Next up, we'll talk a little bit about CinemaCon. So it's still going on as we're recording this. I think as we're talking about this, they're showing The Flash in its entirety to the live crowd. So I'm curious to see what the reactions are from fans coming out of it, not executives. But we'll talk briefly about Sony and Warner Brothers because we could have split them up, but Sony completely just put half effort into this year, which was super kind of bizarre. And Warner Bros. Had a decent amount to this. So,
You could say that they came late to the party.
y'all, Sony came like half an hour late and still finished at the time that they were scheduled to. It's like they had a Spider-Man announcement, and then Kevin Feige was like, "No, you're not announcing that today." And that was like a good chunk of their report card there that they had to pull at the last second. So Sony, not a lot from this panel. They talked a little bit about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Nothing that we didn't already know. They're like, it's going to take place in New York this time. Going, cool. And characters are coming back. Nothing about the original cast, I don't believe. I don't know if they're coming back or not. But actually, here's where Josh and I will die on the hill together. I don't care if the original Ghostbusters come back. You can bring them all back.
Yeah.
You could just leave Bill Murray there because Bill Murray's kind of a dick, especially in those movies. Like, cool, Ernie Hudson's back, and he's, I'm sure, going to be a big factor in this, especially after the post-credits of the first Afterlife. The one that I want is, why do I always blank on his name? The guy from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
Why am I blanking on his name? I need him to... Louis Tully. I know that's the character's name. I just need him to come back because he's just the best. He's just the purest.
Rick Moranis.
There it is. I always forget Rick Moranis' name.
Had to live Google that.
But yeah, they talked about a little bit about Ghostbusters Afterlife sequel. And then it was noticeably absent the Spider-Man stuff. They only talked about one Spider-Man project, Kraven the Hunter. But before we get into that, nothing about Madam Web, even though that's done filming. Nothing about Venom 3, even though we just added some new members to the cast recently, and we know that's coming. Nothing about Spider-Man 4 in the MCU, even though it's like the worst kept secret that that's definitely happening. It's one of those weird times that Sony was the one tight-lipped and Kevin Feige's the one that's been talking about the project. It was bizarre that they didn't announce anything. El Muerto with Bad Bunny, nothing from that. But no, they decided to focus on Kraven the Hunter. And boy, did they drop a bunch of juicy details. Kraven the Hunter will be rated R, to which everyone's going, oh? Excuse me? I think, maybe it's just me speculating here, I think this definitively puts a nail in the coffin of Tom Holland ever showing up in this universe.
I agree.
I think once Venom showed up at the end of Venom Let There Be Carnage in the MCU and then immediately got booted back to that universe without ever coming in contact with Spider-Man, just to drop off a little bit of stuff and then never to have contact. I think that was Kevin Feige's not so subtle way of saying, screw you, you're never coming into my universe. Like, you're allowed to exist over in this corner here, but the jellies and the peanut butter aren't going to touch in this circumstance here. We're not going to cross our streams. So I think Sony at that point was like, all right, screw you. We'll make them R-rated then. Because the thing with Venom has always been, we want to keep it PG-13 so we can cross it over with Spider-Man at some point. I think that's not a possibility anymore. I think Kevin Feige's just like, no, this is the one thing in my universe that I'll put my foot down on. We're not crossing over with your trash. No offense to those that like the Spunk universe, so they're calling it. But they're not the highest of quality. But Kraven the Hunter, from everything they were talking about, sounds interesting. They said it was very brutal. From the people that were there, they said it was brutal and violent, the trailer that they showed. Very hard R. And who shows up at the end but the Rhino? To which Josh brings up a great point that we're all kind of thinking, which Rhino are we talking about here?
Yeah, especially because it's phrased like, and then a guy transforms into the Rhino. Okay, cool. First of all, that's not really a thing the Rhino does.
Nope.
So you've already lost me on that. Now, if we get a situation where it is a permanent like we get a flashback to like a permanent when he like was turned into the Rhino. That's cool, but like just the way that it's phrased is very very confusing. To use Paul Giamatti, I'm fine with that as long as it's not that stupid robot Rhino. I hate that thing so much.
Yeah.
Um, I will say, if you use Paul Giamatti, it just confirms all this is happening in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man universe. So there's that, but I don't think I think Andrew said that he would never come back. He doesn't want to come back, but who knows? There's an option for a story there. But it's very interesting that they are now, after two Venom movies, finally going to rated R. Not like Let There Be Carnage would have been your perfect opportunity there, but whatever, man.
It's not
Craven
like
the Hunter.
it's not like Carnage is an actual serial killer or anything.
Yeah. Vegan Craven the Hunter is going to be rated R. All right, buddy, whatever you say, man. I still do not know how to feel about this. Give me the teaser trailer and then we'll talk. But like, it is promising that they're going to make it rated R, and it's kind of cool that we're going to see the Rhino in this. I just, which Rhino is it? Is Scorpion involved as well? I would love to see Scorpion at least once on screen, in a suit. Let me be clear. I know you nerds are out there like, oh, he was in the Spider-Man. I don't care. I want him in a suit. Give it to me. We will see what happens. Maybe they're building to something, and that's why they're slowly adding more. But this is Sony, so I have no doubt that they're not building something. I would even argue maybe that Morpheus probably would have benefited. Morbius, sorry. Morbin time would have benefited from like an R rating so that they could go as far as they need to with a living vampire like idea. But like,
so
the movie sucks. So
then Morbius could have actually drank real blood instead of fake synthetic blood.
Yes, correct.
I think Craven. I don't think Rhino will be the main villain just because he never is. He's a good supporting. If he's a video game character, he's the one that you fight at the beginning of every Spider-Man video game ever known to man. I think the villain for this,
just to get you familiar with the controls.
Yes, basically. This is how you dodge. This is how you swing. I think the villain for this, it's either the villain for this movie or the villain for the sequel. Craven's half-brother, the Chameleon. It just makes sense. I think they already said that he has a half-brother in it. Like, maybe you could have him and Chameleon being trained together under Russell Crowe, their father, in this. So we already know Russell Crowe's in it. I would not be surprised in this light if Chameleon is the villain and they kind of change up some stuff about him. Like, in the comics, Chameleon's a dude that, depending on what iteration you're watching it, is either he makes his own masks and is a master of disguise. He's a little turtley. No, that's a very obscure joke for a certain demographic there. Or other incarnations, he like can change his appearance. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like the super spy in this situation and is like a master assassin to quote unquote make him cooler. But I wouldn't be surprised if Chameleon is the villain for Craven the Hunter, or in the sequel, like they set it up of like, you were my brother, Craven. I have the high ground. Please let that be actual lines of dialogue from Craven 2. Which leads us to the Warner Brothers panel, where they actually announced stuff, but not nearly as much as we were expecting. Primarily because maybe we had our hopes up for some DC stuff, but not a ton of new stuff. David Zaslav came out and apparently gave this big rousing speech about how the future is theatrical, and they said Warner Brothers is not really interested in direct-to-streaming movies anymore. I'm going, good. You just look at all the money that you make by not putting your movie on streaming first. Super Mario Brothers, as it's about to cross $1 billion this week or next week.
Yeah, baby.
Then, to the surprise of a lot of people, myself included, they announced that Beetlejuice 2 is actually happening. Now, I don't love the first Beetlejuice, but Beetlejuice 2 is one of those things that Facebook is the home of the god-awful fake movie posters that you see every once in a while from your one person and your friends list that only sees like 3 movies a year. And it's just like, I saw this poster on Facebook. That means it's real. And it's almost always a Beetlejuice 2 poster. And for years, I've just been like, guys, we're not getting Beetlejuice 2. Well, now we are. Those posters are still garbage and 100% fake. Use some deductive reasoning here, people. It's either Beetlejuice 2 or we're getting a High School Musical 4 with all the original cast. Are you that dumb? Really?
No, we're not.
And then they like
Yeah, there's no way we are.
the quote unquote trailer that they show is just recycled footage from the first 3 movies. I'm going,
Yes.
these movies that you claimed you've memorized. It's the whole side tangent we can go down that road, but we're not going to. Sticking on the somewhat horror train, they announced another Conjuring movie. If this was 2013, I'd be really excited. This one's going to be called The Conjuring: The Last Rites, which I'm going, cool. Please let this be the last of the franchise, please.
Does that mean, this is the last? Please let it be the last one. Let us move on from this series.
It's gonna be like Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter of like they say it's the final, and then they're just like, nah. If it makes money, we're totally gonna just go in a different direction with it.
The Attack on Titan final season is now in its fourth part now. It's like, dude, your final season is literally 4 seasons long, so I don't know what you're doing here.
And then they announced Final Destination 6. So I'm conflicted because I actually really like the Final Destination movies. That should come as a shock to no one. They're crappy 90s and 2000s horror movies. Of course I love them.
Yeah.
And also Final Destination 2 has burned and scarred a whole generation of children into not wanting to drive on highways anymore. Like, even people that haven't seen those movies are just going, oh yeah, isn't that a thing from Final Destination? I'm just going, yes, it's one of the greatest kills ever of a person just getting blasted by a log in the face. That being said, I do, but I don't want more. I think the premise for Final Destination has always been super interesting, of like someone that just avoids death, and death kind of going, no, I come to collect one way or another, and also kind of potentially hinting at Tony Todd's character might be death itself. That's always kind of how I interpreted it. But the last Final Destination kind of ended the franchise in one of the greatest ways to end a franchise ever, and I'm not being hyperbolic with that. I think how they finished up the last one, I think it was Final Destination 3D, is genius. So spoiler alert for those that haven't seen it. All of Final Destination 3D, which came out, I believe, in 2011, you think that the movie is set in 2011 until the final scene when all the characters that survive the movie are getting on the exact same plane as the characters in the original Final Destination movie. Surprise, surprise. It was set as a prequel to that first movie. And they actually do sprinkle in some hints every now and then, like characters using old cell phones, big, huge computers, but you're not paying attention to that. And so actually, like, is a closed loop. It ends the circle perfectly. I'm going, that's perfect. That's how you end a story. That's great. Now we're getting more because Hollywood. I'm still excited just because I like Final Destination. They always get very, very clever. They're like Saw, except if I liked the characters slightly more and was a little more creative with its kills. They're still gory and violent, but I don't feel like it's as gratuitous as it is with Saw.
Yeah.
How many of the have you seen all the Final Destination movies?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I saw Final Destination 5 in theaters. So
really,
yeah.
Do you want more? Or are you
like,
just like, I'm good?
I see, and I'm conflicted as well because they do close the loop very, very, very well. Even as someone who was not super familiar with the series, when I saw, because oddly enough, the 5th one was also my first in typical Josh fashion. But like, I'm gonna hit myself later for saying this, and I think you're gonna be surprised. We need horror schlock again.
Darn right we do.
Like, I've never thought I'd be the person to say this, but every single horror movie that's come out in the last 5 years has tried to be the next thing.
As much as
do the next big thing,
or the thing.
As much as I hate it, as much as I detest old, 90s schlock slashers, they're a lot of fun, and we need more stuff. We need to get back to that kind of like that filmmaking, and so that when we do make stuff like a Conjuring or it feels bigger. It feels like it's taken more seriously because it's not just like, well, The Conjuring came out and then 20 different movies copied The Conjuring. So it's like, okay, whatever.
As much as Josh and I love the Vavitch, not every horror needs to be the Vavitch. Sometimes you need a
Agreed.
chopping mall. Sometimes you need an Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Just because it's fun to have a diversity of horror.
Yes, I agree.
Speaking of things that might end up being horrifying, we got a little bit about Timothy Chalamet's Wonka. They haven't released a trailer or anything to the general public, but they announced that Hugh Grant will be playing an Oompa Loompa, to which I'm just going, so you're going for all the Oscars this year, aren't you? I'm not gonna lie, this is one of my most anticipated movies of the year because of my immense love for the book.
Mm-hmm.
But this leaves me scratching my head, and then it dawns on me just now as I'm saying this. The only reason that not Hugh Jackman, that would be awesome. Hugh Jackman is a Oompa Loompa. The only reason Hugh Grant was cast as an Oompa Loompa is because this is the same guy that directed both the first two Paddington movies, starring Hugh Grant
Proud of you.
in the second one. Yes, because the first one's Nicole Kidman. The second one is Hugh Grant. And again, watch the Paddington movies. If you don't believe me, according to Pedro Pascal, it's one of the greatest movies ever made. So there's that.
Oh man.
But yeah.
I see. This is going to be absolutely horror inducing. Nightmare inducing. However, I like the idea of not all of the Oompa Loompas looking exactly the same. Because they're not. Like, as long as we're not pulling their description directly from the book, I think we'll be okay. But I like the idea of them not doing what the past couple of movies have done, which is just like take one guy and plaster his face over all of them. Well, let me take that back, because even the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, all of the Oompa Loompas for the most part look differently as far as
they're
like
all
facial
different
structure
actors,
and stuff like that. That is not the case in the Johnny Depp one, but that is not the least of its problems. But yeah, it's gonna be so weird. I hope that it's a situation that is you can only catch it if you do a rewatch. I hope it's not, or it's a Daniel Craig and Star Wars kind of thing where it's like, hey, that's that Oompa Loompa right there. That's Hugh Grant. And then you as an audience member could be like, whoa, that's crazy. Okay, that's really fun. But not like all of a sudden there's an Oompa Loompa next to Wonka going like, hey man, I'll take the giant blueberry away. And you're like, that why did Hugh Grant just show up?
So my guess is that
what is happening?
My guess is that Hugh Grant is going to play the head of the Oompa Loompas. Since we know this is a prequel, I bet you he's the head of the Oompa Loompas that Wonka has to convince to come join his factory. Like, he's the leader of the people trying to avoid the Hornswogglers, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And it's not Swanglers.
Yeah, I was about to say, it can't be Hornswogglers because Hornswoggle is a wrestler, and that's immediately where my mind goes. Although I would love to see, cast him as a Oompa Loompa, please. I could make it work.
Okay. So I have a vision in my head now, because you keep confusing Hugh Grant with Hugh Jackman, of them doing a a 22 Jump Street kind of credits where they just have a bunch of different movies with Oompa Loompas in them, and one of them's like a Wolverine ripoff, and Hugh Jackman is a Oompa Loompa playing Wolverine, and that's so funny to me.
Lastly, they touched briefly on DC stuff, but not a ton. Again, I think they're mainly going to wait until the latter half of the year, until most of the DC movies have come out, before announcing new stuff. Just be like, we know you don't really care about this stuff in 2023 because we're going to burn it all down anyway, so we're going to try and focus on these. And, reports of Aquaman not being particularly great, they might want to focus attention away from that. But they talked briefly about Aquaman, basically kind of confirming some things we already knew, while also dropping some new stuff. They said Aquaman will be teaming up with Orm to fight Black Manta, who has a black trident. This time I'm going, okay, cool. You gonna kill Mara for us in this movie, please? That's all I ask. Just because she sucks as a character and as a human being. And then they talked briefly about Blue Beetle. the movie that they're totally not going to leave out to die. We swear. We swear it's good. We swear this is the start of the new DC universe. Except if it sucks and it bombs, in which case, nah, that one's going to get thrown by the wayside like we did with Shazam. But basically, I like that they kind of joke with it. They're just like, yeah, Jaime's family is going to know that he's a superhero because you try keeping a secret from a Hispanic family and going, okay, this is clearly written by a Hispanic director. That I'm just like, he knows that the family is going to be at the core of everything. Josh and I are super excited for this movie. Surprised it didn't drop anything new. Like, even if it was just like a new minute-long trailer or just talk that extensively about it, still makes me nervous about this movie. But I'm hoping for the best with Blue Beetle and they don't just leave it out to dry.
Yeah, at the very least, I'm hoping that even if it kind of isn't as good as we hoped it would be, it at least puts Blue Beetle into the consciousness of the mainstream of people being like, oh, okay, I'm aware now of this Hispanic superhero kid. That's exciting. Aquaman 2, still nervous about it. Still kind of wish we at the very least got some screenshots or even like a teaser or something. I know it's not till later in the year, but gosh, dude, I've never wanted to get through a year of movies so fast.
Lastly, for our news this week, it's gonna be weird talking about this person in this context, but everyone's favorite YouTuber, Markiplier. I read an interesting headline that I kind of completely agree with of the YouTuber nobody hates, Markiplier, is making a movie. I'm going, that's kind of true, because even if you don't actively watch Markiplier stuff, I don't know of anybody that actively hates him. Everybody enjoys Markiplier. But apparently Mark is trying his hand as a director again. Again, we need to clarify.
Yes,
he has done this
again
before, but I'll make the case that it hasn't been like in a movie in a conventional sense. He's done at least 2. Has he done more interactive movies? I know he's done at least 2.
No, 2. Well, I mean,
he
to
did
be
In
fair,
Space
his
with
2
Markiplier and A Heist with Markiplier.
Yeah, he at least 2. And to his credit, and it's something he said. Okay, let's preface this. You and I both are huge Mark fans. I've watched Mark since college. That's my guy. But
it is a little weird seeing him over my shoulder. Like, it's so distracting.
It is. It's kind of weird. But it's really fun too because he, to his credit, Heist with Markiplier and In Space with Markiplier are at least 2 or 3 movies worth of content each. So like the writing part, I think, and directing part, I don't think he has any. That's not going to be a problem with him. Something that he said over and over and over again is that each new project has new stuff that he has to learn, and this is. I don't know. It's not known if he's going to put this in theaters or what all this is.
Theaters.
It is going to be in theaters. Oh, dude.
Also, I think we haven't clarified what this project is. Josh, you know what this project is more than I do, though. So
yeah, which is crazy because when we talked about video games that should be movies, I said Iron Lung, and now all of a sudden, Markiplier is making an Iron Lung movie. Iron Lung is a game that about a incarcerated guy who gets stuck in a Iron Lung style submarine to explore a blood ocean. Mark has played through the game twice and it's very obvious that he loves it a lot. So it was when it was announced that in his trailer, little teaser, that he was directing an Iron Lung movie. Yeah, that's not that surprising. It was one of his favorite games of last year, so yeah, that's pretty hits the nail on the head there.
At least from my first reaction when I saw this, I was going, "Oh, good for you, Mark," and also at the same time, really, Iron Lung. Like I had not seen that one, so I went back and watched it. I was going, really, this is the one that you pick. Interesting, because he's done a lot of big popular videos, a lot of popular games that I think could also be adapted incredibly well. There's one, I forget what the game is called, but it's him, Bob, and Wade in like a hedge maze labyrinth, so to speak, and then like drop the glow sticks and everything else. Like that could have been interesting. I'd be very curious to see a Golf with Your Friends movie just because
Or even like Raft could be. I could see him doing
Yes,
Raft.
they're known for Raft. I'm surprised they don't do Raft.
Yeah, or just like, but at the end of the day, I think this makes sense because if you think about it, uh, from a production standpoint, it's a pretty small. Like you could probably all do this all in a warehouse for the most part. You really just need your set wise. It depends on how big they're going to make this movie. Your set wise, you really only need that submarine design. So like, okay, cool. I'm going to support Mark in pretty much everything he does. I'm excited about this. He obviously is very passionate about it. I've been watching, like I said, I've been watching this guy since like 2010. So yeah, like this is my guy.
I think it's also cool that he's kind of like taken steps to get to this point. It's not like he just out of blue, but like some other hipster YouTubers have just been like, oh, I have a big enough following. I feel like I can make a movie now. It's over the past couple of years, he's definitely done more of the creative side. Like we've said, he's already done 2 interactive movies with a bunch of content to them that already have a story structure and everything else. He's been working with the Corridor crew to do more like visual effects and storytelling in that manner. So you could tell he's a creative individual that wants to try other things than just Five Nights at Freddy's reaction videos. Like he knows that that was the bread and butter that got him to where he is initially, but I don't think he was ever content staying in that section. And he was always more than willing to try new stuff, which he's just an entertaining and likable guy. So I'm very curious to see what he brings to the table, but also this means another up-and-coming horror director is added to the mix. I'm totally on board with that, too. I half joke and I'm half serious when I say this. What roles are Bob and Wade gonna have for this? Because he puts his friends and stuff. Like, I mean, I applaud him for that. He always has his friends back and he's always looking to put his friends in stuff. But I'm just like, so is there gonna be a voiceover that Bob or Wade are gonna somehow be the narrators for this? Or the distractible guy needs to be the narrator for this.
Yes. So that's a good question because technically, quote unquote cast wise, you really only need like 2 people. So you have a narrator and the guy who's actually in the submarine. So I mean, it also depends on how extensive he goes with the lore, because this second time he plays the game, the developers added a bunch of lore to the game. So I'd be very curious as to how in depth he goes. It could be very, very interesting. Excited. It's Mark. He's great. It's Iron Lung, which is a great horror game. Also great. Bring it on. Why not?
As per usual, this week's episode is sponsored by TeePublic, your one-stop shop for all things Uncharted Media merch, whether it is mugs, hoodies, t-shirts, notepads, whatever you want, with our fantastic designs, Tinfoil Hat Theory, Uncharted Media logo, other designs that we've got. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube, help us get to 1,000 subscribers. Or if you haven't already, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts at Uncharted Media Podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, we are probably there. Now, CGI is becoming more and more prevalent, but also there's good CGI out there to the point that people don't realize that it's CGI. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the bottom of the barrel, the trash heap, the garbage of the garbage, the Scorpion King from The Mummy Returns. You just know that's going to be on here somewhere. But like we said at the beginning of this episode, it's going to be a lot more eclectic than you think. There's always like those lists of like Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern or the Scorpion King from Mummy Returns. I have one of those on this. But this is more of Josh and I's picks as opposed to like the worst of the worst. These are the ones that we personally, as people that have never spent a day of visual effects in our entire lives, are personally offended by, and people that make them should be proud of their career choices because they work hard and a lot of times they don't have enough time and energy to actually get the job done because people above them are dicks. Where'd you think I was going with that rant there, people?
Because I did mention to you that I wanted to make sure that almost like outside. So once you get out of like the early 90s, the heyday of modern CGI and computer graphics. There is a lot of a lot of techniques that did not exist 10 years ago. um Watching Corridor has helped my understanding of visual effects so much, but like to the point that it almost makes me look at some of the lists that people make when it comes to worst CGI. I'm like, it's
It's
not
of its
really that bad.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something to always keep in mind with bad CG is almost like 80% of the time it's because the artists were not given enough time to complete the effects, um, which is always unfortunate, and you know somehow a problem that we still have. So there's that. But yeah, let's dive into it, man. Like what? Actually, okay. Just to be clear here, I have a couple honorable mentions before we dive into our main lists. I put this in the honorable mention because I know it doesn't technically count, but it does follow under that umbrella of CG. Polar Express is a nightmare, but
Yeah.
it's not doesn't technically qualify because it's not a live action movie for this list. But like, golly, like there are elves that just T-pose through the crowd. The eyes are soulless, and nothing kind of. There's so much that in that movie that does not work. Another movie that I want to talk about on honorable mentions that like people always put on their list, but like it's kind of the point. Sharknado is bad because it's supposed to
It
be.
was made
Uh,
for $20.
yeah, it's literally made for $12. So like, I don't know what you expect. And to be fair, people watch the crap out of it. So don't
I
like
love the Sharknado
you can't
movies.
really knock Sharknado whatsoever. Like the scene where the shark's flying at him and he jumps at it with a chainsaw is iconic. Does it look great in CG? No, not at all. But it's still cool.
Or like,
So there's those.
I think it's either Sharknado 3 or 4. When you were here in Florida, did you ride Rip Ride Rocket with us? Like the big
No,
red one.
no. Oh
Sharknado,
wait,
yeah, the big red
no,
one.
no, 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 no. I
Um,
didn't.
in Sharknado 3 or 4, Chris Jericho's a ride attendant that dies on that ride. At the top of the ride. I always remember that whenever I'm on it. Yeah, guys, a lot of visual effects people just don't have the time or budget. No, Polar Express, that one can rot in hell. That one has no excuse. The thing
Yeah,
with Polar Express is it was directed by Robert Zemeckis, the same guy that did the Back to the Future trilogy. And this was during that time that he still kind of has this issue today of Robert Zemeckis very much likes toys and kind of messing with
yes.
whatever the latest and greatest technology is, whether that will age well or not. So he did Polar Express, weird CG. Beowulf, which like 10 of you will remember that movie, which also has the weird
Weird
CG.
CG.
But he also
Gosh.
did Jim Carrey's A Christmas Carol with the really weird CG. And then after that movie, Disney's like, okay, just stop. Just stop. And then he most recently did Disney's live action Pinocchio, which also has some weird CG. He's always been more obsessed with
Yeah.
toys than proper storytelling in his later years. It's kind of bizarre to see. So I only limited my superhero movies to like 3/4, just because there's a lot of examples that you can pick from, and I'm sure when Josh says something, I'll be like, oh yeah, I definitely agree. But there's some that just stood out more than others. So I've got superhero stuff, horror stuff, and then 2 random assorted ones. So where are we going first here, Josh?
You know what? As always, let's knock these superhero ones out of the water real quick. I want to get away from them as much as possible. Let's start off the top of the broadcast off with let's talk about Justice League 2017. Joss
There it
Whedon's,
is. There it
Justice League.
is.
I am not going to say that the entire movie has bad CG because
Zack Snyder finished most of it already.
Yeah, but like also people still say that, which is wild to think. I get it's not perfect, but like some of it's to the same quality that Marvel puts out, and you guys didn't have an issue with that. So until recently, but I think the most obvious one, and I know you know where I'm going to go with this, is that atrocious mustache that they have to hide for Henry Cavill. It is not bad later in the movie. It's
Because
you
they're
can
not
still
really
tell.
covering it up.
No, but that first opening shot is so blatantly obvious that they're covering something up on his lip that it's hard to not laugh at.
So I do have Justice League on here too, and I was going to
Uh-huh.
talk extensively about the mustache because it's this whole. If that's the story of the mustache removal is more interesting than the movie itself.
Yeah,
But to me, it's not the worst CG in the movie by a landslide. I know the mouth is
that's
wonky,
fair.
especially actually, it's bad when at the beginning of the movie of like the S is like a river, it winds, but you'll eventually find your way. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? No, it's when he comes back to life and he's on the Kent farm and he says, "Yes, ma'am," and he's got this big old Joker grin on his face. I'm going, "Oh God, that's not your lower face." No,
Oh yeah.
the worst CG in the entire movie was clearly a reshoot with Aquaman. And that is when Ben Affleck goes to recruit Aquaman, he like takes his shirt off and he hops in the water. That's clearly shot by Zack Snyder. And then Ben Affleck like makes some quip or whatever, and you can tell that that's a reshoot. But we cut back to Jason Momoa's Aquaman, who is blatantly in a green screen in the middle of nowhere. Like the backdrop looks so wonky. The lighting does not match the scene whatsoever. Because I remember watching it in theaters with Heather, and we both look at each other and go, "Oh my God." Like, if Heather's pointing out how bad the CG in something is, and she's much more casual, you know that it immediately
Yeah.
takes you out of the scene. Once you see it, you can't unsee it of like the lighting on his face, the lighting on his whole body does not match the rest of the scene. The backdrop. Okay, guys, here's a little secret here. In filmmaking, if your background way off in the distance is in focus, but your character super close to the camera is also in focus, something is wrong there. Like, not everything in your picture is super in focus because there's this thing called depth of field. Your eyes naturally do this. Of when you're looking at something far away, it's a little blurry. It can't all be sharp and in high quality. That blatantly bad reshoot to me is still one of the worst CG shots I have ever seen in a movie. Worse than the mustache, but it doesn't get nearly as much of a hate because it wasn't as publicized. The mustache is bad, but I think a lot of people roast it because of how much attention it got.
I mean, that's fair, but people in general roast Justice League a lot, and it just, I don't think it necessarily deserves all the roast that it gets. It's usually just a bunch of Snyder fans that are like, do you want to, I started that off. Why don't you hit me with one?
I almost put Black Panther. I'll be honest. I almost put Black Panther.
Really? Okay.
Not for most of the movie. It's just that end fight between Killmonger and T'Challa that's been like so widely publicized of just like, what the heck happened? Because the rest of the movie is visually gorgeous. But no, that was too easy. And I'll be honest, when I first watched it, I didn't notice it. This other Marvel movie recently, I absolutely noticed when I'm watching for the first time. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Oh my God. Like, I'm surprised there wasn't shots of this movie where you just had the red missing file, like, error from Adobe on here because,
Yeah.
y'all, what color is a green screen? Green.
Green.
Sometimes that green will leave color and light or actual green bits still in people's hair. It's a problem, but experts know how to get rid of it. Except for some reason in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, because there's multiple times that America Chavez will be fighting things, and you can clearly see the keying has not been done properly, and you can still see the green screen in her hair. It is not done visual effects. There's so many times that you're just going, aha, you are clearly standing in front of a green screen because your backdrop does not match your current location. Same thing, even to a greater degree with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That definitely feels like you're in nothingness. Like nothing there feels practical. But I don't think those are bad effects. They just don't feel very real. Whereas Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, it actively takes me out how bad and unfinished some of the visual effects are in that movie. I'm going, I see what you got on paper, but oof, you got to put this one back in the oven, or else you're going to get somebody food poisoning.
Yeah, tell me that they didn't have enough time to key things, or like tell me that the VFX budget was not cut. Like, come on, like that is just it's really like unfortunate because of course the people that will get blamed are the effects artists, the CG guys. Like they're the ones that catch the blame, even though most likely it was our favorite person, Mr. Cheapek, cut budgets and cut all these things so they didn't have enough time to finish it. And keying is a time-consuming thing, especially when you have someone who's moving, especially when there's hair involved. So just like the fact that there's frames that you can clearly see the green screen is that's really unfortunate, and I hate that for them. I don't think you'll bring it up, but I'm going to because we're talking about green. Let's talk about Green Lantern.
I'll say this before you get into it.
Mhm.
I will die on this horse that Green Lantern is not as bad as y'all make it out to be.
Oh yeah,
Is it bad?
I agree.
Yes, but is it in the discussion for worst comic book movies of all time? I definitely don't think so. It fits into that category of easily forgettable. Like, I think if it came out in that Daredevil / Punisher era of like the early 2000s, I think people would be a lot less harsh on the movie because Ryan Reynolds is a perfect Hal Jordan and Blake Lively is a really good Carol Ferris. It's everything else that's just kind of interesting. But
Yes.
the CG is the big problem, but I don't think the structure of the movie is nearly as bad as people make it out to be, but the CG definitely does hurt the movie.
Oh, I agree. I could sit here and talk about Parallax and talk about how, he doesn't like nothing about everything about Parallax and every scene that he's in feels like a movie from the early 90s. It doesn't fit in the 2010s. It doesn't look good, but I think the biggest issue, and I think Ryan will say this as well, is not just the mask, but the suit itself. It is weirdly shiny. It never looks like it's actually there in the scene. It literally looks like they just plastered it over him. The mask, of course, is the worst part. Whoa, you're moving on me there.
Oh, what the heck happened
buddy?
there?
Well, the mask, of course, is the worst part. His eyes don't even look like they're actually there in it when the mask is on. Undoubtedly because they tried to put the mask on and realized, oh wow, this doesn't work. We're going to have to replace his eyes too. It's unfortunate because, like you said, Ryan Reynolds is a really great Hal, and there's a lot of really good acting in the movie, and the story is okay. It's not terrible, but the actual, and even like the aliens the alien Green Lanterns, they look good. None of them look bad. Which is odd because even their suits look pretty good.
Yeah.
So
They
I don't
have
understand
abs.
why Ryan Reynolds' suit looks bad. So it's yeah, which is also weird. Like you don't need to have abs. That's fine. But yeah, the suit in Green Lantern is so bad.
If it came out nowadays, you know what people would say? It's all Taika Waititi's fault because he's in the movie, so it's clearly his fault.
Which is something I actually forgot about until I was watching some scenes.
Because he looks so different, and also he's restrained and not being Taika Waititi's normal self. So my last superhero one, I'm sure Josh has other ones, but I don't know if he's going to bring this one up or not. X-Men Origins Wolverine. What the heck happened to this movie? Like, there's multiple opportunities we can point about the CG, which sucks because once again, there are some great things about this. Liev Schreiber is so freaking perfect as Sabretooth. Like,
I
the
agree.
relationship between Logan and Sabretooth is so good in this movie. And also, Taylor Kitsch is a really good Gambit. And I'm sad that this movie had to happen so that
Yes.
he couldn't go anywhere. I know Channing Tatum has lobbied to be Gambit forever. I'm going, no, I want Taylor Kitsch back, which is, not something Hollywood has been saying for the past decade or so, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But no, there's two big examples that I always point to for X-Men Origins Wolverine going, oh, did you have $100 to work on this movie? The obvious one, the claws. Oh my God, people
Yes.
roast the claws. Even as a kid that I'm watching this, I'm going, oh, they didn't use real claws for this movie. And I get the story excuse of he just got these claws, so they're going to look shinier, they're going to look different than before. It still was a choice to use CG how it was, and it looked really noticeably bad, especially the scene in the bathroom when he's like clanging them together for the first time. It just looks terrible. But the Wolverine claws get a brunt of the attention, and not nearly enough attention is spent on the god-awful Patrick Stewart scene. Oh my God. So they decided,
Dude.
because this takes place before the first X-Men, we need to have some of the X-Men be younger. So we see like a flashback to a young Cyclops, whatever. You just recast with a different actor. You can't do that with Charles Xavier. So they just go with 100% CG Patrick Stewart, who is the shiniest, shiny Mr. Clean, Bob Chapek looking mother dude ever in the world. And it doesn't look natural. He's too smooth. He looks nothing like Patrick Stewart. However, that's bad. The scene entirely is bad because he shows up and looks bad. But the scene of them all getting onto his ship and flying away also looks like they had like someone's backyard that they're filming in, and was clearly, it seemed like a very late game reshoot going, well, we got to connect this back into the story somehow. So like they have this very short set it looks like that they're filming on, and the CG looks wonky like as they're trying to add other stuff to it. It's just a bad combination of things. Like the claws bad, the claws are bad, but Patrick Stewart just does not look like Patrick Stewart, and the rest of the whole situation there. The diamond girl, the girl that can like transform into diamonds, that was,
Gosh.
I'll give him credit though.
Yeah.
Diamonds, surface textures for that can be a little difficult, but just the CG in X-Men Origins Wolverine entirely is real bad, which sucks because
Yeah.
I can tolerate that movie. I don't hate it as much as other people do. I can tolerate that movie, but the CG, I cannot.
Yeah. That the opening like 30, 45
It's so
minutes
good.
before it's super good. Like Project X and everybody involved is a lot of fun.
And again, Lee Schreiber's perfect.
Dude, he's so good as Sabretooth. Oh my goodness. I would love to have seen what they would have done with him if they gave him the traditional look as well. Like later on, like, oh, dude, absolutely. But yeah, X-Men Origins is pretty bad. My last superhero one is a little bit of a cheap shot.
Oh wait, no, I have a somewhat superhero one, but you'll see. You'll see.
It's technically like I have another one that's like not a superhero movie, but technically anyway. This one is going to be a little bit of a cheap shot because it is 1997. And there's a lot of texture issues that CGI could not handle in that time. But in 1997, they took a stab at doing Spawn in live action.
Yeah, that's mine.
It is not good. Like, okay, take out of the fact that the movie is not. It's not a good movie. It's not good. I love Spawn, but like, it does not do anybody justice. All of the CG looks bad, but it is the worst in the
Hell?
scene where he crashes. Huh?
In Hell?
Oh, hell's really bad, actually.
Yeah. No, I was wanting to make sure we talk about two things.
It's blatantly obvious of how bad it is when. Yeah, the hell's really bad. Anytime that I forget the villain's name, but anytime he shows his like actual form, he's not great. But when he comes through the skylight and floats down, and his cape is flowing everywhere.
Yeah.
Look, It's hard because in 1997, cloth is really hard to do. It's hard to do now, but it's really hard to do and get right in that day. But they still decided to go with it, and I don't think I would have minded it as much if when he lands and it's still swirling, it wasn't going through people in the scene. It is like a glitchy suit, like glitchy video game moment where like it is very clear like that the player has added this skin onto their character, and the world that
It's a
character inhabits
mod.
was not ready to generate that skin, because it just the cape is just it's cool. Don't get me wrong. If they had gotten the effect right, I wouldn't be talking about it because it'd be it's such a cool stinking such a cool shot. But it's so bad. It's so bad.
The thing is, Spawn actually has a halfway decent practical suit. It's the accents that go with it and this desire
Yes.
to be recreating certain comic book panels of like, look how big and voluminous the cape is in this shot. I'm like, we don't need to do that for a movie. But yeah, the shot, I was thinking the exact same thing. The shot where he descends from the sky is bad. Is very bad. But also, yeah, the clown's demon form is bad. But to me, the worst has to be when they're in hell and the devil can't even sync up his words properly. Like,
Oh my gosh.
the
Yeah.
devil like is just kind of a floating like gif almost, and someone like dubs over him later. Like they didn't even bother syncing up the mouth with the words. I'm just going, y'all.
Yeah.
Also, honorable mention to Blade. Like Blade definitely has some questionable
Yeah.
special effects.
But like at the very least, Blade is a good movie. Like
Yes.
it's entertaining and it's fun. So like you can kind of forget. And that's always like that's what's always interesting about this is like Black Panther, the train scene to me doesn't get as much flack because the rest of the movie is really good.
Yeah.
Even all the shots afterwards are really good. But like when you have an instance like Spawn where the movie itself isn't good, and so then you just automatically, maybe it's like a cognitive thing, but like because the movie itself is not entertaining, you're automatically seeing all the visual flaws in the CG as well.
Yeah. Spawn, you get points for trying, and maybe you'll get a good movie someday. You got a great animated series, I'll give you that.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Spawn, Spawn also perfectly transitions me because it counts as both a comic book movie, but also as a horror movie, and I got quite a few horror movies, more than I thought, because
Let's go.
it's me. I'm deciding if I should give this one a pass or not because it was 2003 when this movie came out, but screw it, it looks terrible. Freddy vs. Jason has one of the worst shots I have ever seen, and I think Josh knows what I'm talking about. I think.
Oh, I hate this movie so much.
Really?
Oh my god.
Then again, Josh just
I
hates
hate this
fun
movie.
horror movies.
No, I hate crossover movies with slashers. It doesn't make sense to me.
Wait, then do
just
you hate Alien vs. Predator?
Yes.
We're about to fight, man!
We'll fight right here through the screen.
It's like the Emperor's New Groove all over again. No.
Yeah, no, yeah. I know what scene you're talking about, though.
Freddy vs. Jason is freaking great, and this comes from someone who has not seen a single Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And also, Jason totally wins at the end. I don't care that Freddy winks or whatever. But there's this scene where the characters break into a lab to get like information about like the murders that Freddy did in the past or something like that. And so one character, your obligatory stoner character, stays behind and is just chilling in the security room. He's token up, and Freddy decides he's gonna creep this kid out, and he shows up as like one of the caterpillars from Alice in Wonderland. Y'all, why? Just, I have so many questions. Like, I know Freddy does things weird, but it in a movie that honestly doesn't have that many weird CG elements, they actually did a lot more practical than you think. That there's a brilliant fire stunt later in the movie that like Jason's on fire for like a full 30 seconds or so to a full minute as he's going through a cornfield. Great stunt. But this scene, I'm just going, what is happening? What is this Alice in Wonderland looking dude happening here? And then I think the worm guy like crawls into the dude's system or something and like possesses him. So Freddy's now possessing this guy. It it was so bad in a movie like that it becomes noticeable when the CG happens, because a lot of horror movies don't have the biggest of budgets, so they don't need to have special effects. Like, I'm trying to remember if it was the first Hell House or not. Josh will remember because he's only seen the first one. Is the first Hell House the one that has a portal to hell at the end?
No, that's the last one.
Because there's one Hell House, which is a really great found footage series, but should not have special effects. And they do like a portal to hell, like Doctor Strange portal scene. I'm going, oh, you used Microsoft Paint for this scene, didn't you? Like, it looks real bad, but not as bad as that caterpillar, because the caterpillar at least had a freaking budget. Oh, God.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. It's super confusing as to why it's there and why he looks that way. He brings out a bong and is like smoking with the guy for a little bit, and then turns around and squeezes under the door, which doesn't. I know like the scene is about a like demon pretending to be a caterpillar, but like when like just the way that his space like and weight works, he shouldn't be able to just squeeze under a door. It doesn't. It's so bad. It's not even laughable. I hate that movie so much.
So I typically don't mind monster crossovers, unlike fun-hating Josh over here. But there's one monster crossover that I do hate, that really should have been better just based off the name alone. What the hell happened to Van Helsing? Because, guys,
oh man,
is that not where you thought I was going with this?
No. But it actually gives me an opening transition for my next one. So yeah,
Van Helsing should be a fantastic movie, but like the CG for just about everything is bad in this movie. Despite the fact that they've actually got some really clever ideas. Like, I still think it's super cool that in Van Helsing, when a character turns into a werewolf, they actually peel off their human skin. It's not like in other movies where the werewolf, like, the fur and everything comes through your skin and all of a sudden you're just super hairy. No, you were actually, like, in excruciating pain as you more or less molt into a werewolf. I'm going, that's a great idea. This movie is an abomination of filmmaking. At the beginning, you see Van Helsing trying to stop Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde is god-awful. He looks so bad. At least they're smart enough to hide him in the dark and in the shadows a good portion of the time. A mistake they would not repeat with Dracula's brides and werewolves in this movie, as they just show him in broad daylight and... oh boy, so I have both Mr. Hyde and just all the monsters.
I could just see you being like, well, that was a choice. All right, cool.
It was, because, like, God, there's some cool things in it. Hugh Jackman looks really cool as Van Helsing. And then you see Dracula's brides come and attack a village, and you're going, this is awful. And I question my loyalty to the genre sometimes. It's just... it's real bad. But Josh, what was your brilliant transition you had?
Okay, so we're talking about monster crossovers, right? And oddly enough, you bring up a good one. It would this guy named Mr. Jackal. So another
Mr.
movie.
Jackal?
Yeah, Mr. Hyde, whatever. I don't care.
Jekyll?
I don't care that much about this. I literally do not care about this movie. But the final monster battle in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is absolutely terrible. It is so bad when you have one completely CGI character facing off against a somewhat practically done monster. It's so confusing, so weird. It does not work on any level. The bad monster doesn't stay still long enough for your brain to process what he actually looks like. It is the worst. Like, it just... and I've said this before, it is so unfortunate that the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was Sean Connery's last live action appearance. I just, gosh, like you were talking about like terrible monster battles, and I was like, hey, I know one. It's that one.
Y'all, right now, I give you all permission to be mad at Josh because he reminded us of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I thought we as a collective society agreed to just leave that one in the past as a fun trivia of what was Sean Connery's last movie? And then wasn't that one dude from A Walk to Remember in it or something like that? It's
Yeah, it's got so many weird cameos.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen on paper should work. If you did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen today with James Gunn, oh, perfect. Or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with Guillermo del Toro, oh, say less. But no. No, 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 no.
No.
It was bad. The CG was bad. They should be ashamed. Except for the CGI artist. If you didn't have time, it's not your fault. It's, what's the Henry Winkler gif? I know, you've done nothing wrong, and I love you. Like, CG artists are very rarely ever the ones to blame. It's time constraints.
Yes.
Getting back to another, this should have been great, but it wasn't. The Mummy Returns. Let's talk about that. The original Mummy.
Yeah, let's want to get into this.
The original Mummy will never be topped. It is cinematic perfection. I choose to believe that Brendan Fraser's Oscar for The Whale is just a makeup for not winning one for The Mummy because he deserved it for that instead. Because cinematic perfection, The Mummy it's art, in the words of Dean. What you're looking at is art. Except for The Mummy Returns. The Mummy Returns is the Age of Ultron of the Mummy world. It's not bad, but it's definitely a step down, and you only kind of have to tolerate it, as opposed to the original is much better. It's a stupid little kid. It's just he's a brat. But also, Dwayne looking... I would say it's the worst Dwayne's ever looked, but then we saw Black Adam's box office.
Yeah.
Oh,
I almost had Black Adam on this list too, because while the CG is okay,
when he's
in
flying and his head is like elongated. What the heck?
dude, it's so bad. Oh, when they try to make him not look like The Rock, instead of just using a body double,
They
like,
like
you
shrink
dummies,
his body
what
like
are you
Captain
doing?
America style. I'm just going, hey,
Stop.
that's like skinny
Ugh.
The Rock. You can't hide The Rock from
You
us.
can't do it. Oh man. But this was before the time when they thought adding The Rock to anything would make it a surefire success. Hey, you know what? Let's, just everyone love the Scorpion King. Let's tie that in here. Why not?
The Scorpion King came after The Mummy Returns.
You don't know anything.
I know more than you these days, apparently.
Yeah, I do. I know nothing. I'm not even gonna pretend.
So, here's where my last horror one. I'm gonna hop on a little bit of a rant here because it's the worst CGI in a scene and a moment that did not need CGI if at least one person on set was paying attention at all. Why the heck is there CGI in Halloween H2O, Halloween 20 years later? Why? Okay. For context, as Josh is going to be dying of laughing here, Halloween
It's a
H2O.
good H2O rant. We haven't had one in a while.
H2O is great. Again, it's that we need 90s schlock every once in a while. I love a good Kevin Williamson movie. I love a bad Kevin Williamson movie. The Faculty is not great, but I'll watch it. Kevin Williamson wrote Halloween H2O, also made Dawson's Creek. You can kind of see where the things kind of line up a little bit here. H2O, I maintain, is one of the better Halloween sequels. It's what Halloween, the David Gordon Green trilogy, wishes it could have been. I'll go out and say that now. But this movie had some mask problems as well as Michael Myers problems. At the beginning, when Michael first breaks out and he kills the first couple of people, I believe he's still using the mask from Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, which, as much as I hate that movie, that's probably one of the best masks in the franchise besides the original. But for some reason, after that scene, the higher-ups, I believe Harvey Weinstein, decided not to keep that mask, and so they went with something else. And so I forget what happened But somewhere along the way, there's some mix up with the mask, because they're putting new masks in, or they were using the old mask when they shouldn't be. And so there's a scene in the kitchen. There's a really good tense scene of a guy trying to get a bottle opener from inside the sink with a garbage disposal. So you think his head's going to get shredded or whatever else. A scene that they stole and borrowed for Halloween Ends, but once again, they didn't have the balls to go through with it. So the dude gets out scot-free. He turns around, and what's staring him in the face? But CGI-faced Michael Myers. It is normal Michael Myers, except he has a weird CGI face because they couldn't be bothered to have one of the actual masks. They couldn't decide what mask to go with, so they go, well, we'll just CG the mask for this one shot. No one will notice. Oh, dude, you focused on it good and hard. We noticed. Put it back. Put that thing back where it came from, or so help me. So help me. What did you do to Michael's face? It's not the worst it's ever looked. We've seen the Rob Zombie Halloweens. But this did not need CGI. It's almost as bad as the time Michael Myers was pink and blonde. That happened too. Halloween's a weird franchise, man.
It sure is.
That's all Josh has to say about that.
It's I mean, dude, my favorite is the one is to this day still the one with was it Busta Rhymes?
Trick or
Because
treat.
it doesn't try to be anything
That
fancy.
mask is atrocious.
It is.
You see Michael's eyes.
But Busta Rhymes is great.
Also, again,
Oh,
in case
man.
you missed it, there is a Halloween, I believe it's Halloween 4, that apparently production was just super tired and they didn't notice. They filmed two shots actually, with Michael wearing a bright pink mask with blonde hair. And I'm going, how did that slip by anybody? Y'all are morons.
Agreed. Oh man. I only have I have one horror and another that should be considered horror.
I have two. I have two left that are non-horror, just two left in general, my assorted movies.
Oh, dude. Okay, let me knock some out here then. So real quick, and I don't think I need to explain it. It as great as the scene is, the shark attack in Deep Blue Sea. It's
We're gonna
great.
fix
It's
this
very
hole.
funny, but it's also like Samuel Jackson's clearly not there, clearly a ragdoll. The shocks, like the blood isn't real. The water's terrible. There's nothing great about that scene. Okay. The Matrix Reloaded in 2003, the Smith fight, it being that very, very obvious that not all the Smiths are there. And sometimes neither is Neo. That's great. Love that. And a movie that has otherwise really great CG. Let's see. Mary Jane. Well, really, okay. So I want to talk about Scooby Doo a little bit because there is a story to this one, and I do feel again we're always on the the CG artist side of things because for those that don't know, the 2002 Scooby Doo, which is arguably some of the best like Scooby Doo live action I think we will ever have. Period. It was originally not written to be a through and through like adaptation of Scooby-Doo. It was more along the lines of like kind of not a necessarily a parody or satire necessarily, but it was definitely not supposed to be a 100% adaptation. And somewhere along the lines, the production was like, execs were like, "Hey, no, we need actual like a monster in this. Like this needs to be like." Something that I know we know you're almost done, but you need to add some stuff. And so now we get terrible CGI monsters. That terrible scene where the Mary Jane gets smacked in the head by a bush and she has to put her face back on. It is not good. It's terrible to look at. It is unfortunately definitely an issue due to time constraints. My last before I'm down to two. Okay, let me be clear. Spy Kids 3D has a very great, solid place in my heart. And to be fair, it was made for $12 in Robert Rodriguez's garage. But God, that CG is so bad.
It really
Everything
is.
about it is so bad. Like on almost most of the time unexcusably bad. It's crazy that the best looking scene in the movie is the one where Junie is talking to his grandfather after his grandfather gets legs and starts jumping everywhere on the moon. That's the best looking scene in the entire movie. And God, it's I love Spy Kids 3D. It's got a special place in my heart. I wish we saw like Sylvester Stallone as a schizophrenic villain. Love it. Love
Well, I mean, we've seen
hiring
how he treats the
Elijah.
Rocky franchise lately.
Yes. Love having Elijah Wood make a 3-second cameo. Fantastic. That's so funny to me. But
Right
like,
around the
and
same time as
Junie's
Return of the King.
yeah. Junie's great. Like there's so many great performances, but it's definitely clearly a kids movie and definitely clearly made for $12. And I love Spy Kids, but God, it looks so bad. Oh my gosh.
Spy Kids 3D, I will forever give a pass because it has the most blink and you'll miss it joke of all time. When all the kids are introducing themselves, you got like, what is it? Like Data is one of them, and one of them's like
Yeah.
named Rez, and Junie's like, "Hi, Rez," and then goes over to. I'm just like, wait. Say that
joke.
again.
Great joke.
He said, "Hi, Rez" in a video game movie. I see you. That's pretty good. Yeah, Spy Kids 3D. This comes from the same franchise because we'll always bring up any opportunity to bring up the greatest line in movie history. It's the same franchise that in Spy Kids 2, Island of Lost Dreams, you get Steve Buscemi questioning God, going, "You think God sits up in heaven because he fears what he created?" And everyone in the audience just goes,
Everyone, including in the scene, is like, what is going on with this guy?
I'd like to believe Robert Rodriguez is behind the camera just going, "Steve, that wasn't even in the script." And Steve's just going, "I'm just feeling the scene, you know? I feel like
no.
if you ever want to know what an
Knowing
existential
Robert-
crisis is for an actor, it's Steve Buscemi questioning God's role in the universe."
But knowing Robert, like Steve Buscemi was just kind of like sitting there, like, and he just said it, and Robert was like, "Keep that in. You rolling? Keep that.
It's just so bizarre.
Keep it." As the kids say, "Let him cook. Let him cook."
So,
Oh man.
this is a famous one. It sucks because the rest of this movie looks spectacular. And even some shots of this thing look spectacular. And then other things look really, really bad. I'm, of course, talking about Tron Legacy. One of the most beautiful movies ever created. That's also incredibly boring. And it has a really weird looking Jeff Bridges. And then they also have a CGI Jeff Bridges too. But the thing is,
Got him.
it just, Jeff Bridges in Tron Legacy just looks like Jeff Bridges wandered onto set one day after doing like a big Lebowski reunion tour somewhere, and was just like, "I'm just here for that Disney money, man. I am the Flynn. You can call me the Flynn, the Flinnerino, the Flinster, whatever you feel like." But
Tony made this movie in a garage full of scraps.
he built this out of an arcade with a box of scraps. But see, that Jeff Bridges looks a whole lot better than CGI young Jeff Bridges, who, again, like Patrick Stewart, looks too smooth and not natural. But the frustrating thing is, he looks really bad in some scenes and downright amazing in other scenes. Like the first time we see the back of his head and the side of his head as he's like walking away, as he's like tucking his kid in to sleep or something. And that's actually not bad. That's really good. They use the shadows well. They light it correctly. It's a lot like how Josh and I have talked about the Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny trailer. Some shots in that, Harrison Ford de-aged looks spectacular. And other shots, oh, that's a deep fake Harrison Ford. That doesn't look right. There's just something about the uncanny valley with faces that just don't look right. And especially for Tron Legacy, like, unfortunately, that's its legacy for this movie is really, really weird looking, smooth skinned Jeff Bridges.
Yeah. Which I really hope whenever they do, because they're doing a reboot, aren't they?
I don't know if it's a reboot. It's
A
something with Jared
reboot or
Leto.
like a sequel. Yeah, it's something else is coming. I hope that they put a lot of love and care into it because the idea of Tron is interesting. It's very cool. But yeah, Legacy just ain't it, man. This one is a little bit indicative of its time. In 2002, James Bond was at its peak. Die Another Day has that atrocious surfing scene that is
Yeah.
it is hard to not look at that and not be like, no, this might be the worst CG I've ever seen in my life. Like it's it is very clear that Pierce Brosnan is not actually there. It's very clear that it's hard to tell even like when they pull out and they do the wide, it's supposed to be like a computer generated Pierce Brosnan surfing on a giant wave. It's very clear even then that doesn't even look right. Like nothing about the scene looks good. Nothing about it is believable. The concept itself is stupid. So it's like, all right, fine, whatever. But like, I almost give it a pass because 2002 James Bond just is not the move, fam. Just not the move.
So, and here's the Uncharted Media obscure reference of the week. Die Another Day doesn't look half as good as it should because Jimmy Neutron Jet Fusion did it better. Because
You know, I didn't think I was going to get a Jimmy Neutron reference today, but
not
I'm
only
glad
that, Jimmy Neutron Jet Fusion, the James Bond knockoff in the Jimmy Neutron universe, which I'm pretty sure just tried to steal from Die Another Day. Like, I think they did do that scene, except do it better because it matches the art style. It's not that blatantly bad, but yeah. Y'all, it's one of those, you got to see it to believe it. It's just going, so Pierce Brosnan is the first actor to ever do a scene in a movie via Zoom because he's clearly just using a green screen in his backyard somewhere. Just, yep.
Yeah, it's not good.
What's your last
Even
one?
like when they transition to like a live action the live action segment right at the end where he's like clearly actually there and they're on a set, it's still even that just doesn't look good.
Yeah. So what's your last one then?
So let's talk about Cats because it's not all right.
With or without the buttholes?
It's the 2019 Cats movie.
With Jason Derulo.
And Taylor Swift and a whole bunch of people.
And Judi Dench still wearing her watch.
It's okay. So I'm gonna be kind of picky as far as what I point out for this movie, because the fur itself on all of the cats looks really good. For the most part, the transitions from fur to face on their facial captures is not bad.
Of course, you're the one to bring this up.
Acting like cats is a thing that you were gonna get in this movie. Sorry, that doesn't make it bad. The thing that does it for me is that they try to pull off the perspective of like having these small cats in this big room, and it is never ever pulled off to a point you made earlier in the discussion. If your foreground and your close up are both like that, your brain cannot compute. While the models of all the cats, they do tread into uncanny valley, and there is that kind of aspect for a normal person to be like, why am I feeling aroused by a cat person? I don't like that. There is a lot
Only
of like,
you were thinking that.
No.
And of course, you were the one that had to bring up cats.
I know I do. I know I was not the only one thinking that. But at the same time,
this isn't a Star Fox movie, Josh.
One can dream. But like the perspective of the entire movie is always off. The scale of all of the cats in comparison to their environment is almost always off. It just in a movie that was going to be really, really hard to pull off in general, it is the one thing that you kind of really needed to nail, and it just does not work whatsoever. Obviously, Uncanny Valley with cats and human faces, not a whole lot you're going to be able to do with that, unfortunately. But like the actual models themselves, meaning the CG models of all of the cat fur and stuff like that, awesome. They're well lit, they're well animated, but like it just there's no way it can get any better than that.
You notice a trend here this week, guys. Human faces are incredibly hard to do correctly.
Agreed.
It's not on my list today, but like Grand Moff Tarkin and Princess Leia in Rogue One. Because I think Grand Moff Tarkin, some shots he looks pretty good, and Leia both looks good and bad, depending on the angle.
Yeah, that close up is pretty bad.
There's a movie franchise that I have not seen a single movie in this franchise, but I know of the infamously bad CGI baby from Twilight.
God,
Josh knows where I'm going with this.
I have nightmares of that stupid freaking baby. I almost cussed. Like I hate that thing so much.
So Twilight has some weird CGI to begin with, but human faces are really hard to get right. Apparently, baby faces are even harder to get right. Isn't that right, WWE? But all 5 of you will get that joke. But this baby, dude, I have been watching horror movies for quite a few years now. I have yet to see a horror as terrifying as the Twilight baby. Why they couldn't get an actual baby, I don't know. The baby does not move like a normal baby. The baby does not look like a normal baby. The eyes come from Spawn himself because it is a devil child. The child that we see in Twilight, I'm 100% convinced, is the same baby that we don't ever see in Rosemary's Baby, that they purposely don't show you because it's too terrifying and leaves it up to the imagination. That's the baby that was in the crib in Rosemary's Baby, was the baby that shows up at the end of Twilight. Because, oh my God, what did you do? Have you seen a child at any point in your life? It's, you know, when you see like those haunted shops like Spirit Halloween or whatever, and they always have like the demonic babies, those are more warm and comforting than the Twilight baby, the CGI Twilight baby. The thing is the stuff of nightmares. It's so bad.
It's the more like I hate it. It's so uncomfortable because like there's a realm when it comes to CG faces that is like, we always talk about the uncanny valley, where your brain can obviously tell it's CG, but they can't you can't mentally pinpoint why it's off, but it's definitely off. There's no denying that, like, why this is off. Like, why is his mouth so small? Why are the eyes so big? Why does it look like they tried to make Stewie before he gets his head squished? Like, why? It's so horrifying. And the only reasoning I can come up here with is they decided to go with a CG baby to make the audience less uncomfortable about the fact that
Edward's 100 years older.
That and that Jacob like imprints upon her. So like at least he doesn't imprint on an actual baby. He's imprinting on an absolute monstrosity.
I was gonna say, I like how you phrased that.
Oh, dude, it is. Twilight is all kinds of screwed, and I do not understand people who are actually still adult fans of that series. I just don't. And it's not even like hey, this isn't made for me. Like, no, like the characters are clearly terrible people, and it's just yeah. Anyway, that's my Twilight rant for the day.
Well, what do you guys think? What's the worst CGI you've ever seen in the movies? Whether it's an individual moment, the entire movie in and of itself. What's the worst thing that you've seen in Joss Whedon's Justice League? Let us know down in the comments below. We always like hearing from you guys. And as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, or wherever else. And as always, subscribe to us. We're on the main channel at YouTube. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.